Hello, I'm Christian Fraser. You're watching Context on BBC News. In Moscow, President Putin accuses the United States of trying to pull Russia into an armed conflict in Ukraine. In Kiev, the British Prime Minister says it's Russia holding the loaded gun, and once again he warns the Kremlin there will be severe consequences for any incursion.
We are also preparing a package of sanctions and other measures to be enacted the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukrainian territory.
In his attempts to overturn the 2020 election, new reports suggest Donald Trump had drafted executive orders directing the federal government to seize voting machines in the key swing states. And new figures show America could have halved its hospitalizations had its vaccination rates kept up with those in Europe. Tonight, with the context, Republican Rina Shah, who advises the Renew Democracy Initiative, and the chief political commentator of the I newspaper, Paul Wall. Rita, while this is going on, we've got the Secretary of State in Washington on a half-hour conversation with his opposite number in Moscow, Sergei Lavrov. Nothing much came out of that. We still don't have a written response from the Russian side to what the Americans have put forward. What are you making of the way the Biden administration is handling this delicate political dance?
Well, I think the Biden administration is actually failing in this moment. I had trusted that Joe Biden and Blinken would step forward and really seize the moment. Of course, diplomacy needs to win out here. That's what most of us want. We don't want war. Americans, by and large, are sick of invading other territories, doing people's work for them, nation building abroad. That was something that Trump actually got many accolades for, was being somebody that said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure we get out of this conflict. So the very fact that we are in this delicate dance, but it seems that anything that America does in this moment under the leadership of Joe Biden or any of his diplomats is failing, because the reality is this, is Putin is saying exactly what he just said in the clip you played. He's saying that this is America's fault. He's loving to distract.
But what's the alternative? What is the alternative to that? Would you advocate putting sanctions in place before they set foot in Ukraine?
Without a doubt. I'm struck by Boris Johnson's words, bloody resistance. This military effort that America seems to love for many years. And the world looks at us and thinks America loves military might. Of course, that is there. But we have not exhausted all the options. We have not been strategically smart diplomatically. And I was really hoping the Biden administration could meet that moment. There is still time. There is still time. But the very fact that Putin is saying what he's saying and history is being forgotten, the very fact that this is playing into what he wants. His dream, his real dream, is Soviet Union 2.0. Yeah. So annexation of Crimea was concept, but we're talking about Ukraine's sovereignty. What are we doing, the United States, here? We're missing the moment. And I think, again, there's still time, but we're missing the moment. OK. Well, within Congress, there are bipartisan efforts to try and find a response to all of this. Generally speaking, there is agreement on the size and strength of the sanctions. But as Rina says, there are some differences over whether those sanctions should be applied preemptively. 6 weeks after the 2020 election, Donald Trump's advisers drafted two versions of an executive order directing the federal government to seize voting machines in crucial swing states. One of them was addressed to the Department of Defense, the other to the Department of Homeland Security. It was all part of a broader effort to undermine the results of the election. The directive went through his personal lawyer, Mr. Giuliani, who was, we're told, rebuffed by officials. They told him he had no such authority. But the report suggests Mr. Trump was more involved than previously thought. The evidence is contained within 700 documents the National Archive has handed over to the January 6th committee. Rina, the executive orders were drafted. They weren't acted upon. The orders weren't issued. But what is the significance of this? Christian, the significance remains to be seen. The January 6th committee, the select committee in Congress, is doing its work. But here we are over 1 year out. And it feels that there's just been, again, a drip drop of information from this committee. The American public learned so little and in pieces. But this is a big one. So this is kind of standing out here. It confirms one thing, that all of us who observed the Trump presidency know that he is very hands-on in certain matters. I, for one, am surprised, yet not surprised. If you had told me he'd taken Air Force One to the state of Georgia and unplugged voting machines himself, I would have believed you. That is how we came to know former President Trump, a hands-on guy, somebody that was just so deeply concerned with his image and absolutely consumed by grabbing power that was not constitutionally his to grab. There we were, January 6th of 2021, a couple months out from election 2020, and he was doing still everything potentially within his power to try to remain in office. That is completely unheard of. The modern American presidency hasn't seen such egregious action. Whether it was Nixon or Clinton, nothing has come this close. He tried to move the goalposts in a way that, again, constitutionally just was not his to try to grab. This power consumed him, and I am not surprised that he would explore executive orders. His advisors, I believe, should be also held legally accountable, because it's somewhere, it doesn't just tiptoe up to the line of the law. I see this crossing over, and I would really not be surprised if the Department of Justice got involved, Christian, very quickly.
The United States has signalled it will approve coronavirus vaccines for children under the age of 5 by the end of February. Officials at the Food and Drug Administration say they expect Pfizer to submit evidence in the coming days. The company has trialled a 2-shot vaccine in which dosing levels are much smaller than those given to adults. COVID-19 cases among children have spiked since the rise of the Omicron variant. Separate to that, some interesting research published today by the Financial Times, who's been looking at hospitalisations in the United States, and they've concluded the numbers would have been much lower had the United States been more successful with its vaccination campaign. America had 161,000 COVID patients in hospital on the 19th of January this year. The paper says that if the United States had the same rates of vaccine coverage as Denmark, just 91,000 people would have been in hospital, or 100,000 if the United States matched the vaccination rate in the UK, or 109,000 if they'd matched that of Portugal. And the FT analysis shows how the US gave up an early lead in that vaccine race. In March last year, 36% of over 60s in the United States had received 2 doses, which was way ahead of Denmark or England. But 6 months on, 18% of that age group was still to get their second jab, compared to 2% in Denmark and England. By late December, as Omicron struck, 30% of Americans had gone 6 months since receiving a second dose, miles behind Denmark or England. Rina, I think what this shows is that this was a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and it really does underline the logic behind the president's fraught attempts to try and get people vaccinated. You can't see it any other way when you look at those figures.
Well, I think when we look at this entire story for what it is, of the lower rates, it seems, when we talk about how we entered the Omicron spike, we see vaccine hesitancy is everything here. Having made my career on the right, I am completely still surprised by what I hear from conservatives today who scream out, "My body, my choice." Well, when we enter as children into American public schools, there is a long list of vaccines my children needed, I needed when I entered. And so this was part of the societal pact that many right-wing folks don't seem to want to contribute to and be a part of. And so the debate continues, and we will continue to see spikes and variants as long as these unvaccinated folks continue to make these illogical arguments. That is why the Biden administration cannot win out. It is the vaccine hesitancy that pervades American society.
While we're talking about how we can ease the pressure on our hospitals and our clinics, there's news today that Zipline, a company in the United States, is going to begin delivering by drone prescription medicines to patients in the Charlotte areas of North Carolina. It's still to get the sign-off from the Federal Aviation Authority, which I guess is no small matter given our overcrowded skies, but it is the next step in instant delivery. In fact, it's already happening because for some months this company have been trialling Walmart deliveries, Rina, in Arkansas. And I don't know how I feel about this. I can see why you would use it in remote areas, but do we really want drones buzzing everywhere delivering our medicines?
Well, for medicine, I must say, Christian, I've got to push back there. A couple of years ago, this would have made so much sense during those first coronavirus lockdowns. It actually would have been so sensical to think that, yeah, a drone is dropping something off because it's not safe for me to head outside. I thought that we would have seen this faster, and I welcome it, actually. I realize
I don't know, Paul. I thought the beauty of London was the fact there were no planes overhead. I don't want to hear 10,000 drones dropping off medicines, do you?
I think that's the problem. As soon as you hear the buzzing, I know certainly my dog would chase after one of these things and down it as soon as he could.
Yeah. Apparently there's this, I don't know if either of you use the What 3 Words app, but now they can drop them within 1 square metre, the 3 words. So I guess it's possible, Rina. They just drop it in your back garden while you're at work.
Fantastic. Why not? That's innovative. I mean, we Americans love this kind of stuff. Anything to make my life easier, faster, simpler, especially some people who are immunocompromised. This can really change the long term for them. I'm not one for everyday packages getting dropped off, but life-saving medicines for cancer patients. Come on, let's have a real conversation about what it could look like and what makes sense regulatorily. But I don't even know that we're even there yet if the FAA here in the United States has not even gotten close to approval. So in some ways, I think
you're an early adopter, Rina. You're an early adopter. I can see it. There is a parallel and a crossover here, Rina, because for much of last year, we were talking about the police culture in America after the George Floyd incident and the way they deal with stop and search and the way they treat black suspects that they stop. But we've seen that reform's not easy. I mean, these issues go a long way back in America and it's not been dealt with.
Well, reform isn't just easy, Christian. Like you said, it's messy. And, let's just take a step back here and talk about globally, not just in a democracy like America, but trust in law enforcement is not just paramount. It's crucial to society's thriving and for there to be law and order. So in general, what we see when these sort of preconceived notions about people, whether they be minorities or a certain gender or, whatever it may be, that we are talking about this toxic culture, a bro culture, as I like to call it, one that really demeans women and then also has these archaic notions about who people are in boxes. This is really, really detrimental and has fatal consequences, as we saw last summer and in years before with these numerous incidences of police aggression and violence towards certain people, Black people. So the Black Lives Matter movement and the reforms that sort of have been talked about in Congress since then are important to continue, but it feels that the baton has sort of been put down for the moment because unless we see these bombastic things happening in public, we as a society don't get enraged and take to the streets. So I think there's really, especially in the United States, a need for a continued conversation on reforming our law enforcement. But I'm like you, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I know it's just that bad apples do tend to make the whole bunch rotten.
Yeah. I always question, Rina, whether you can really do diplomacy through a third party. I don't think it worked particularly well when the Americans were speaking to the Iranians through the Swiss or via the Swiss. Does it work when clearly there's this humanitarian disaster unfolding in Afghanistan that it's the Qataris who are doing the talking?
Well, the regional support of Qatar is everything. And I think that's what the Biden administration is counting on fully. They know the withdrawal. They knew before they did the withdrawal that it was not going to be perfect. Those of us who are sensible, whether you fall a little bit left or a little bit right, all of us recognize that it was going to be hard. Donald Trump said he was going to do it, never actually did it. So it fell on Biden and he got tremendous backlash from the right. I too felt there were many failures, but I do think the withdrawal was important. So it happened, right? And it got done. But now what? And that is exactly what our State Department is up against, is these failures being called out every day of the Biden administration. And so I think it's almost this, this move that just made the most sense to the Biden administration is why aren't we looking at our regional allies? Now, of course, here in the United States, the UAE is very powerful with their lobby, but the Qataris have proven to be a tremendous ally. And Paul brings up great reasons for it. Commerce is huge in this. But look, what other option did the Biden administration have? So here we are, and I think this is a good thing, obviously. It's very good for us and for the UK.
And it's a lonely road, as he says.
It is really terrible, Christian. Let me put it this way. Let's call it for what this is. This is the Genocide Olympics. China is oppressing its people. It's since getting the bid back in 2015. They have just the numerous human rights violations, just tampering down freedom of expression, all kinds of things. China not just oppressing its people and pushing out propaganda about what this Olympics is doing. China is almost benefiting from the IOC having given the Olympics to it. So I think, yes, Inez is correct. This diplomatic boycott, not enough.
Not enough.
Here stateside, I can tell you, though, that only half of Americans support it. So many don't even know that it's happening.
No.
So we need to raise awareness. We need to raise awareness.
Paul Wall, Rina Shah, really nice to have your company this evening.